Hello, hello, welcome. Today is not Wind Down Wednesday, guys. Today is Friday, July 7th, and I have a very special interview that I'm going to do with my newfound friend, Walton Patton. I just want to introduce him. Walton Patton is an artist, an advocate of change, and a community leader. He is the father of three beautiful children and the founder of the U Art Initiative, which is called Create Art, Not Violence. He's also the founder of Ghetto Therapy. He is an award winning mental health program. He's just program advocate for ghetto therapy that he just started, and he just received the NAACP Unsung Hero Award, and this is like his 10th award for creating special initiatives for his community. So I just want to bring him on, and I'm going to let you talk to him, and we're going to start this interview. Hello.
What's up?
What's up? How are you today?
I'm good. How you feeling?
I am feeling great. I'm very honored to have you on. Um, Very impressed with who you are as an individual and what you're doing in our community. One of the things that I find really refreshing about you is your ability to be vulnerable, but also show and exude strength at the same time. So let's find out more about you. Who is Walter Patton? Can I call you Walt? Because
Yeah,
everybody calls you Walt. Can I call you Walt?
yeah. You can call me Walt. That's cool.
Okay. Who is Walt?
So Walt is this guy that grew up in the central community, as we call it, Downaway Projects. A fourth generation from my great great grandmother to my grandmother to my mother. Now me, I'm the fourth generation of these projects. I was a kid that grew up in those projects and those circumstances and went through all the hard stuff, all the pain, all the trials, all the tribulations, all the destruction things like fighting, shootouts, stabbings. I was that kid that was going through all of that and overcame that in my mid 20s. At about 25, I started to, wake up different. I got in some trouble. Of course, I had to go down the road, do some time, sit down, do 18 months and get my thoughts together. I had to sit down and really think of who I wanted to be and where did I want my life to go. So yeah, when you ask who was Ward, I'm this guy that come from these structured issues who just did the research on his community, and now what you see is what you get. Like I studied my environment, and now I'm creating solutions.
That's pretty dope. So let's talk about the people in your community that had the biggest influence. You talked about how you changed at 20 years old, how you woke up different. Who had the biggest influence or impact in your life?
You just saying like in general or in that environment?
Just in general or
In
in that
gen-
environment.
So yeah, most importantly, my mom. Us a lot of young guys in the projects. We grew up in single parent households, and it's majority of our moms. There was maybe one or two families out of like 100 friends I had that had a father in the household. So first of all, it would be my mom. Just her not giving up on me ever. She didn't really know how to, raise young men because it's me and I got an older brother. She didn't really know how to raise young men, but her relentless backing of us, like no matter what we did right or no matter what we did wrong, she wasn't going to like turn us down. So my mom was the biggest influence, and then there was this guy, and when I was in the fifth grade, his name was he was my teacher. His name was Mr. Melton. He was a Muslim from the Nation of Islam, and he taught structure, tuck in your shirt, clean your nails, wear deodorant. Like he was that guy. He taught us a lot of things about actual facts and how life moved. Like the actual, it was a lot of crazy stuff he would talk that
Hmm.
we thought was crazy at the time, but really meant a lot to me now, and I utilize it in my life now. So Mr. Melton was my mom first, Mr. Melton, and then there was like, of course, the drug dealers and the hustlers who had all the clothes, the cars, the money, with the things that I thought was everything at that time, to where now I feel like it's nothing. But at that time, those were guys that influenced me to do certain things that I did. So it would be my mom, Mr. Melton, and the hustlers that was, getting money and doing the different things.
So, one of the things that you always talk about is, being an advocate of change, and it doesn't take like a special person. You weren't born special. you just did something great within your community and you had the initiative to do it. What motivated you to do what you're doing? And we're going to get into what you're doing, but what motivated you?
Like I said, just living in that environment all my life and currently living in that environment, just seeing what was really needed. Like, you know, a lot of the times when programs and initiatives get created in our communities and the projects or any red line impoverished community is created by someone who never lived there. You get what I'm saying? So the change, so you don't see change or impact because the person that's creating that change or trying to create that impact don't know the change or impact needed in that environment. Me living that environment for 35 years, I'm 35 years old, know exactly what was needed. Like I said, I did all the smoking, I did all the drinking, the weed, the Black and Milds, the liquor, I did all of that. And the pain was still there after the high went down. So it was like at some point, you know, seeing all these teddy bear visuals at each stop sign from murders, young guys, 15, 16 years old being murdered, my best friend being murdered at 16, me seeing a young 11-year-old get murdered in front of my face, I was like, there's something that need to change. And, you know, I was just thinking about therapy services and just trying something new. We tried everything else. Why not try therapy? You know what I'm saying? So ghetto therapy was created in my front yard because of the need I seen.
So I know a lot of people, when they hear about the things that you've experienced and you went through, a lot of people, even from our community or just have had similar backgrounds, right? A lot of them just leave. They just leave that environment and they go. What made you decide, you know what, I'm going to stay in my environment and I'm going to help it? When so many people do leave.
Yeah. For that reason, what I talked about when you asked who inspired me, like a guy like Mr. Melton, he inspired me, but he only inspired me from 9 to 2:30. So like after those 9 to 2:30 hours, I was in the trenches with, you know, robbers and killers and, you know, seeing people being shot and making that the trend. Like that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to sell dope and sell drugs and be like them. You know what I'm saying? So what I'm trying to say is me staying in that environment, giving these kids another option, something else to be. They know I create documentaries. They know I create films. They know I got partnerships with art museums. They see me on the news. They know I created ghetto therapy and create art, not violence. So to have somebody next door to you like that makes it possible for them to do it too. And, you know, another thing is that a lot of the people that, because a lot of people do leave, and I believe that if everybody that left stayed, we have a much better space. You know what I'm saying? Because we so focused on moving out and contributing to somebody else's economy, which not somebody else's, but white people economy and in a different white environment. That's the goal. Oh, we're going to get some money. We're going to make it out and we're going to contribute to a white economy. Well, what about us staying in our own economy and making it better? You get what I'm saying? Inside of the Black community. And that's another thing. Like every dollar that I've made, everything that I generated, I put it back into the community. I put it back into create art, not violence, back into ghetto therapy. So like I said, over the last 6 months, I spent like $25,000 just on ghetto therapy services and free services alone. So, you know, that comes with a lot. And then I found out that a lot of the people that leave, they are so traumatized from their past in the projects. They're so traumatized that they hate coming back. They can't even see themselves back in that environment because of what happened to them while they was there. Me, I don't see it that way. I want to change. Even though I was traumatized in that environment, I want to change it for the next person, for the next kid. Don't be traumatized in that environment. That's how I move.
That's remarkable to me. You made a quote and you said, "I won't allow anyone to place their fears on me just because they couldn't do it. Doesn't mean I can't." Talk about that and what that means to you.
Man, that's a lot because I'm an artist, I'm a poet, and I'm a rapper. That's how I started off. I started doing music in like 2013, doing poetry in 2013. It was something that I did in prison. I was listening to like a Wale and J. Cole album in prison, and they just was motivating me. Those are two of my dopest artists. They just motivated me. You know what I'm saying? I was excited. Like when I come home, I'm gonna be an artist. So when I came home from prison, I became an artist. You get what I'm saying? And that's what happened for real. Like I won't allow nobody to place their fears on me because they were saying, Walt, you can't make music. You can't do this. You can't do that. Walt, you can't create a ghetto therapy. Walt, you can't create art, not violence. And I was being threatened and everything by my peers in the projects. Like, you can't do this and you can't do that. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna do it. I ain't gonna even respond to the threats. I'm not even gonna respond to the hate. I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna do it with one or two people at Ghetto Therapy, one or two people that create Art Not Violence, and I'm gonna put the name on it, and we gonna make it look big. I don't care if it's 5 people in there. Ghetto Therapy was started at a barbershop at times. We only had like 6 people in there. So now our biggest therapy session, we had 106 people inside of a Cleveland Clinic facility. When we started in the middle, in the heart of the projects, how we end up in Cleveland Clinic. Get what I'm saying? So like these clinics, University Hospital, from University to St. Vincent Charity to Cleveland Clinic to Environmental Health Watch to, as you see, the NAACP, Case Western Reserve, all these people reaching out to me about how I'm getting these Black people inside of a therapy session. I'm already set in stone. I'm cool. So if that stops today, my legacy is already stamped. You get what I'm saying? So like, that's what I mean by can nobody place their fears on me because you scared to do it doesn't mean that I can't do it. So that's what I meant, because people been trying to tell me what I can't do. So many people quit on me, you know what I'm saying? They don't see the vision. And then when they do come on board, they try to create their own vision and say, oh, this is how it should be. When in reality, you should have did it yourself. But now somebody's already got the vision tailor-made for you and you want to try to change it. You get what I'm saying? Like people do that all the time. They don't have the heart and the courage to start something on their own. So they try to join somebody who already did it and then try to live out their dreams through you. That's not going to happen. You're not going to live your dreams out through me. Something that I worked hard for, could have died about, sweated blood and everything. I'm not going to allow you to do it.
That's so awesome. I always say one person can be the change that they want to see. And, just like you started off with 2 people. Well, 50% of everything that you've done was created by those 2 people. It's just the law. It's just how it is. And I think that's really dope. You took something and you made it your own, and then it flourished because you were passionate about it. So you talked about your music. I went on YouTube and I listened to like all your music, right? Everything. And I really think it's so creative. And I know it's a lot of young people, a lot of kids out there. Talk about create art not violence and what you do with that and what you do with the music. Talk about that for me. Did I lose you?
I'm back. You back?
I'm here.
All right, we good. Create art not violence. That was the question, right?
Yeah. Talk about create art not violence, your music and how it all works together.
So create art not violence was really started before Ghetto Therapy. The thing was, because I'm an artist, so I started off making music in 2013. So I had an experience with somebody that I won't really name, but I had experience with a guy that I looked up to at the time. I kind of like respected everything he did because I felt like he paved the way for what I was trying to do. And we had did some music together, and in a position where like legally when you're trying to get funded, are you trying to get paid for your music, you got to have like your ASCAP, your BMI, you got to have you got to own your publishing to your music, and I didn't. And he asked me did I have it, and I told him yeah at the time because I knew I owned the song, the beat was mine, but I didn't actually have an ASCAP or a BMI to where I can get paid to make music. And when I found out that I didn't have it, and we did the song together, and he chose another song to get paid for it, which was not the problem. But the problem was, if you knew I didn't have it, why didn't you send me through the proper way to get educated and how to get it? So, I put too much expectations on people and who I thought that I looked up to or I respected, but they wasn't really trying to educate. So what I did with Create Art Not Violence was add the education piece to the kids. So even though they was rapping and making music, I'm like, okay, let's go about getting your ASCAP. Let's go about getting your BMI, your TuneCore. Let's get you published and licensed to make music and get paid. And that's how Create Art Not Violence started. So it was kids that was performing all over the city of Cleveland, making music. I was doing it with a young lady named Samantha. She actually had the idea, and I had the kids and I had the space, but she had the idea. And she ended up, walking away from the idea, and I just continued it, and I just continued Create Art Not Violence. It was called something else in the beginning, but I changed the name. I added art to it. I added like partnerships with art museums, arts and crafts. I added film to it. At first, it was strictly music. So it was strictly about helping kids overcome these traumatic situations in the projects by using art. So they was using poetry, hip hop, film, arts and crafts. That's how Create Art Not Violence was started, was because so many homicides and kids under the age of 15 was being murdered. These kids needed an outlet. So in 2020, when everything was shut down, from libraries to rec centers, water parks, football teams, everything was closed. I got an opportunity to go inside of a space because of my relationship in the community to bring kids. I had over 65 kids in the summer just doing art, poetry, music, film. Wow. And we was getting it in. Create Art Not Violence. That's how it was started. Like just giving these resources for these kids to have something to do while their friends was being murdered in front of them. It was a kid named Myquan Bennett that was 14 years old. When I was in George Washington Carver doing Create Art Not Violence, he was actually in one of my classes. And during the pandemic, he used to play football. You know what I'm saying? He played for the Renegades at Lonnie Burton. And but in 2020, the football team was canceled. So he was outside, being 14 years old, throwing rocks, they ended up busting the window. The window they bust came outside, shot into a crowd full of kids and killed him. So he killed him right behind Friendly Inn Settlement Center. And Friendly Inn Settlement Center is where I did Create Art Not Violence that same summer. He was murdered in probably April. I started Create Art Not Violence in June. You know what I'm saying? To honor him, even though it was started before that, but I brought it to Friendly Inn because of that reason. Okay, he was killed right here. And it's all they seeing. They seeing this teddy bear visual every day. They walking up to it. So now let me put something positive with it. And that's what I did.
Wow. That's sad, but amazing at the same time. Can you talk about now, one of the things that was very interesting and very true was you talked about red line. Talk about what red line means to my audience who may not know. Explain what red line is.
So yeah, Black Boy Blinded by Red Line is the name of my project, something I created. But when we talk about redlining, so first of all, redlining just identifies on a map. When you see a map, a visual map, and if there's a red line around certain cities or certain spaces, those are communities of poverty. The red line on the map identifies communities of poverty. So that's what people will stop at. Okay, there's a red line on this place in Chicago. Don't go there. It's all kind of underlying diseases, social determinants of health. Don't go in that space. Food deserts, no grocery stores. That's what redlining is. So when you see a red line on the map, that's a community that suffers from a lot of social determinants of health. But that's what people stop at. They don't tell you how redlining was created. So I tap into how redlining was created. And in 1933, Franklin D. Roosevelt was the president at the time. He created this legislation called the Public Works Administration. And what the Public Works Administration did was, say in the projects, this really happened down the way in Central, because Central was Central in 1935 was the first public housing built in Cleveland, Ohio. So all the projects down the way was the first public housing built in Cleveland, Ohio. And it's some up Lakeshore too. It's another one. But so in 1935, down the way was created. But in 1933, what he did was take away the business and home loans, because at this point it was whites coming from the war living down the way, and it was still blacks. But what he did was create the separation by giving the whites that stayed down the way business and home loans from banks. So they was able to move up to the suburbs like Parma, Solon, North Olmsted with these huge amounts of loans, like $200,000-$300,000. They buying houses for $10,000 that was worth $200,000-$300,000. Meanwhile, those same business and home loans from the banks, we were denied. So when they went and got the business and home loans, the white people coming from the war, we tried to say, hey, can we get those same loans? And they no, because of your skin color. So the Public Works Administration is what created redlining. So the specific areas down the way was red line. So now you can see the red line on the map because we were denied business and home loans. Now you're going up to Solon, Parma, and North Olmsted. And those are the communities that Franklin D. Roosevelt focused on all over America. Also, he created the suburban and the project atmosphere. He created the impoverished communities and suburban atmosphere through the Public Works Administration. It wasn't always like that. The blacks and whites in Cleveland was on the same playing field financially in the 1930s until after 1933 when he created the Public Works Administration, giving business and home loans from banks and denying those that. And my great-great-grandmother, who I talked about in the beginning, Lula Patton, used to always talk about redlining, but she never knew the name. She would always say, oh, we lost mom and pop stores, we lost grocery stores, we lost community gardens. And that's what we lost after the Public Works Administration was signed by Franklin D. Roosevelt. We lost everything in the Black community, and it was put in the suburbs. And that's what redlining is. So the strategic planning of leaving us in poverty and putting them into suburban communities was all the law and legislation wrote.
And that's so deep and so true. I know that when you look back at our history, you see that we had, like, I grew up in the Huff area. I grew up on Huff and Wade Park. And when I was growing up, it was nothing but Black businesses. It was funeral home. It was salons. It was dry cleaners. It was gas stations. I grew up in a community that was full of Black own businesses, and then I started to see them disappear and they be replaced with foreigners, and never knew what it was actually called or what was happening. But I did hear people talking about how we lost loans and we couldn't get money to keep our businesses open. And just, it's amazing to me how the government actually tries its hardest to keep us down, but we still rise despite of, you know.
Yeah, I'll give you something interesting about Huff. It's crazy because on Huff and down the way in the projects, they feud a lot. And I don't understand why, because we go through the same systemic issues. We were historically redlined together. So there's a study, and it's called Place Matters. So if you look up Place Matters Ohio, it's a study that says the residents in Lyndhurst live 24 years longer than the residents in Huff because of their structured conditions. So in Lyndhurst, they got Whole Foods, they got all these different spaces, they got gardens. But on Huff, there's no grocery store for real. It's gas stations, liquor stores, so we are being redlined together. And I don't understand why these communities feud when we are going through the same structure issues that was placed on us by the real enemy. And those are the ones with laws and legislations. I don't like to associate the real enemy with a color, because there's Black people in the government that's a part of the stuff too. So it's like, even though it's predominantly white, but it's still Black people who fed us to the wolves and, you know, co-signed these things that happened to us. So yeah, like Huff and down the way, like we just strategically redlined together.
That's deep. Interesting. So let's talk a little bit about ghetto therapy. How was ghetto therapy born? I know you kind of touched on it.
Yeah, like I said, just being in that environment, living in that environment for 35 years. I'm 35 years old, just seeing exactly what needed to happen. Just seeing my friends murdered at an early age, seeing young guys murdered, seeing infant mortality. Like my next door neighbor baby had died at 6 months one morning, and she came outside screaming and crying like my baby not waking up. Come to find out, the baby died from SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. From a poor environment, a lack of food, like a lack of fresh produce, like just a stressful environment. SIDS can be caused by many things, but those are two of the things that happens. Is a lack of fresh food and a stressful environment can kill a baby. We underestimate that. Just an actual food desert, not having a grocery store for 4 years in the community. So all of the social determinants of health inside my community is what made me create ghetto therapy, not having a hospital. So now we just recently lost St. Vincent Charity. They took away like the emergency care and like outpatient or inpatient out of there. They closed one of our high schools down in 2019, which was Jane Addams, and we just had East Tech. They closed our grocery store also in 2019, which was Dave's. And then they surrounded us by 8 prison-based facilities. So surrounding is 1 high school and like 3 middle schools is 8 prison-based facilities, meaning that all of these facilities you can get, held into a holding facility and sent to prison or inside of a halfway house. So you got the 34th and 55th halfway house. You got the 90th Justice Center for the kids. You got the Adult Justice Center. You got the CMHA headquarters. You got the 3rd and 4th district, and you have the women's prison. These are 8 prison-based facilities 5 minutes away from each other within driving distance. But you got 1 high school and 3 middle schools and just a gang of churches, right? So That's why ghetto therapy was started, you know what I'm saying? Because everything starts mentally. Like everything that we go through is mentally, like financially and everything, and physically. Yeah, that's, you know, that's, of course, that's on the top of the list, but it all starts mentally. And red line communities like Glenville, majority of them, that's like the worst area for lead poison. So they have the most lead paint inside of their homes, and people suffer from lead poison in Glenville almost more than, probably more than Flint, Michigan. They talk about Flint, Michigan a lot. And yeah, Flint has lead through water, and we have lead through our homes. Almost every home that was built before 1978 has lead inside of them. And what lead do? Lead poisoning do? It causes ADHD, kidney failure, heart disease, you know, all kind of things. And these are in majority of the homes. Like 1 out of every 4 kids is lead poison before they get to kindergarten. That's 25% of our kids that's lead poison before they even get to kindergarten. So these are all inside of our environments. And you wonder why, like, there was a study in the Seeds of Literacy in 2016 that said 90% of the residents in the central Kansas area was illiterate. And they didn't have, you know, they wasn't good readers, and people couldn't really read in the central Kansas area. That's down the way in Garden Valley, if you think about it. And you like, dang, that's not true. But when I look at social media and see the content and see what people post and see what people glorify, the memes, the destruction, the fighting, like the killings, that's what people glorifying on their page. I'm like, oh, it might be possible that 90% of the people can't read because of what they choose to glorify and post. Because if you could read and had any sense, you wouldn't post negative destruction, because you know what you put out is what you get back. So the comprehension level inside of my environment is very low. That's another reason why ghetto therapy was created, because of the study. Remember, I said I studied my environment. I studied public works administration. I started looking at place matters and seeds of literature to try to understand what could I do to create something to change my environment. And ghetto therapy and create art not violence is what I came up with, because it goes straight for the mental. I feel like if we get everybody prepared mentally and know our struggle, we know public works administration, we know FHA, which is the Federal Housing Act, which prevent us from getting in homes as well. If we know the seeds of literature, if we know everything like place matters, if we know what lead poison is doing to us, if we know the effects of food deserts, then we can create solutions. But if we don't know this, we just gonna think it's normal. And in reality, it's not normal. It's a legislation that was wrote for us to be in this position. And this is what I try to put out. So I never come from a complaining perspective. I come from a solution-based perspective, because if we know the problems, we can create solutions. So in organizations, they say this all the time. Well, the red line conversation is recycled. People talk about it all the time. Nothing is ever done. And I say, yeah, that's true. This is a conversation that's recycled amongst organizations. But the people that's impacted by redlining never heard of it. So people talk about redlining, package it up, put it in a PowerPoint, make it sound good, sell it to other organizations. But the people that's actually suffering from redlining, like me, never heard of it until like 2018, 2019. I went inside a Ginn Academy in John Adams. After the kid got killed at the bus stop at John Adams, they had me come in there and speak. And I spoke in Ted Ginn Academy. I asked them, have they ever heard of redlining? Combined the two schools, it was like 200 students. Only one kid raised his hand and said he heard of it. And he didn't even know what it was. He just talked about the war. Like, it was people from the war. And so he knew what he was talking about, but he didn't know for real. So these are kids that live in red line communities that's impacted by redlining every day, but don't know about it. But all the organizations that's profiting, nonprofit organizations, know about it. And they don't want to talk about it because it keeps them profiting financially. So nonprofits don't make any money if underlying diseases or social determinants of health don't exist. So everything that ghetto therapy stands for is minimizing the social determinants of health and, you know, cutting down on the issues inside of the environment. That's going against everything that people are building for those nonprofits. So what I'm doing is creating a change and stopping us from going through these social determinants of health. But it starts mentally. Nonprofits only profit off of our diseases, off of our underlying diseases and the problems we go through. So yeah, it'd be tough because people don't want you to stop their money.
Yeah, it's so crazy that you mentioned lead poison, because my brother, we like I said, I grew up on Huff. He got lead poisoning when he was a child. He was 5 years old, and he suffered with lead poisoning. It caused his kidneys to fail. He ended up having to have a kidney transplant. It caused him to have a learning disability and all kind of other problems. So me as a person, I was directly affected from lead poisoning and how it affected my own family and my own brother. We almost lost our brother, and when he was about 26 years old, because he actually ended up getting a kidney from my brother, but his kidneys completely stopped working,
Mm.
because of the lead poisoning that he received at 5 years old. He was in the hospital for almost 6 months trying to survive from lead poisoning. So I know that that is definitely, we don't talk about the effects that it has on your mental health and how it affects our community every single day. And that is still a real thing that our community is suffering from, because it was a whole initiative back in like the 80s and 90s, but it's still very relevant today. And it's not something that people regularly talk about. So I thank you for bringing, attention to that.
Yeah,
Ghetto,
I'm
go
also
ahead,
the
I'm sorry.
event. So no, real quick, I'm also the events coordinator at Lead Safe Cleveland. So it's my job to go out into the entire 17 wards of the city of Cleveland and give out information and book events based off lead awareness. So that's why I was tapping in, because people know, but people don't care. They think it don't affect them, when in reality, lead can be in the house.
Absolutely, and that's actually how my brother got it. My dad was, it was in the it was in the dirt that we played, making mud pies when we was kids, being creative, and it was in the dirt, and it also was in the paint. So he was inhaling it, and because he was the youngest of, we were all affected by it, but him being the worst because he was so young.
Mm.
So, um, I want to talk about, when is ghetto therapy held, because ghetto therapy is group session, is group therapy, and talk about what happens at group therapy, ghetto therapy.
So ghetto therapy is every Wednesday from 6 to 8. 4600 Euclid Avenue is next to the Agora. So every Wednesday from 6 to 8, 4600 Euclid Avenue next to the Agora. But every second Wednesday of the month, we're at Cleveland Clinic, the Langston Hughes facility, on 2390 East 79th and Quincy. And that's our teens night. That's 2390 East 79th and Quincy, the Langston Hughes Cleveland Clinic facility, at our teens night. Ghetto therapy is, like you said, it's a group therapy session. It's free and it's open to the public. So a lot of the times when we think of therapy, we think of traditional, regular back and forth, telling somebody our business. They go back and jot it down and judge us. That's not therapy. So a lot of times people, majority men, thinks that therapy is just strictly about traditional and telling our business. But there are several forms of therapy, like Reiki. Reiki is therapy that focuses on our body chakras, our throat, our heart chakras. It's like a massage kind of therapy thing where you exercise, and that's therapeutic. Then we have sound therapy, where we get in therapy through sounds and singing bowls. Then we have art therapy, meditation, yoga. We have foot detoxing, all inside of this space for free. These are free services that we provide once a week for all the residents in the city of Cleveland. That's ghetto therapy. Now, we have broken down into, every first Wednesday is the men's night. It's strictly catered to men, but the women are allowed. It's just facilitated by men, and everything is surrounding men that night. The second Wednesday is teens night. It's strictly for youth and teens, but everybody is invited, but we just celebrating the teens. Third Wednesday is women's night, and it's the same. It's predominantly women facilitators. It's just strictly about the women at night, but men are allowed. And the fourth Wednesday, we have our licensed counselor, Maisha, who's there. She hosted every fourth Wednesday. These conversations, like just recently, just the one that just passed, men's night, it can get real triggering. You know what I'm saying? They was talking about same sex and everything. And some people got triggered and some people walked out. And you know what I'm saying? And that's what ghetto therapy is, because we're not afraid to have the hard conversations. Everybody have feelings. There's people who have feelings about same sex. There's people who is for it and advocate for it, but we have to honor both sides and we have to create a solution in the middle. So I invite these conversations. It was just very controversial. I'm going through it now on my Instagram, and people talking about it was a homophobic conversation, when in reality it's just somebody who doesn't agree with it, right? So with that, on July 19th, I'm having a whole same-sex night, strictly catered to how they feel and their mental health. So now if you felt like you was targeted or triggered on men's night, you have an opportunity to come back and say, hey, we didn't like that. How can we make it better on their night? So it's honoring both sides. those are conversations that we have at Ghetto Therapy, and it gets real. You know what I'm saying? So we invite the hard conversations, because without the hard conversations, we don't have hard solutions.
I agree. And I think that these are the kind of conversations that we have to have in our community. Like, we don't talk about the issues that affect us directly, and I've been to ghetto therapy and I found it very, very refreshing to be able to be in an environment with my own people talking about the issues that affect us every day. And I know that one of those conversations was from that you had last Wednesday, this Wednesday just passed, kind of started in
Mhm.
the session that I went to. And I mean, like, I just feel like it's awesome. And it's just something that we got to start having. We have to have the crucial conversation so that we can be better as a people, as a whole. We can't wait for everybody else to heal our wounds. And so I think it's absolutely amazing what you're doing.
Yeah,
And I'm back.
these conversations is led by residents. Like, us, we live
Mhm.
in, we not considered organizations, we not considered nonprofits. We are residents in the environment who nonprofits and organizations profit off of. And it's time for us to start having the voice on how money gets spent on us. Like, so that's why Ghetto Therapy is very like resident led. I make sure that residents, people who don't get a chance to get their voice heard on the regular, get their voice heard in this space, because we are the people that nonprofits and everybody else is profiting off of, but we don't have a say so in what the money gets spent on. So when you see these are conversations that are strictly led by majority residents. We bring licensed therapists in to kind of like, help anyone that's triggered from these conversations.
Mhm.
But these conversations is led by us. I'm a resident myself. I don't consider myself to be an organization or any of that. I'm just a resident who's seen a need to start a therapy service because we were going through something, and I started it. So that's the unique part about Ghetto Therapy, and it's the unicorn because you never heard of it or nobody's ever done it because they never stayed in the ghetto. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you can't create something if you don't know how.
I think that you are very right. And I think that it is amazing what you're doing. And I know for me, it's something that I needed that day. And one of the things that I find refreshing, like you said, I'm just a regular person from the hood and I just seen a need and I wanted it to be done. And that's one of the things that is enlightening about you because I have seen you be vulnerable in that space. I've seen you share your own feelings, your own trauma, your own hurt. And you talked about healing because I'm always talking about healing on my podcast. And you talked about healing being something that doesn't, you don't just wake up healed, like I'm fixed now, I'm healed now. It's a work in progress. It's something that you're always striving for. You're still going to get triggered. Talk about that a little bit.
So I'll just talk about a situation. So a lot of the times in ghetto therapy, what I do is like I said, I allow residents to facilitate, and I just sit back, I listen, I take the therapeutic sessions myself. I utilize the services. But on this specific night, one of my teammates was like, "Hey, Walt, why don't you ever facilitate anymore?" You know what I'm saying? It was a time where ghetto therapy was, on a decline. There wasn't many people coming, and I was facilitating every night. Like, this is my vision. I don't care if 3 people here. We're gonna have a
Mhm.
therapy session. So she was like, how come you don't get back to facilitating? I'm like, I'm just trying to, raise the awareness of power that residents have and let them feel the power that, I'm saying, that I've been feeling. But on this
Mhm.
specific night, on the men's night, I'm like, you know what? I'm a facilitate. And I have been going through some things as being a single man and being in this position. This position comes with power and winning all these awards and having 14 news stories and people seeing you all the time. This position comes with power, and this position comes in a lustful position where 36 women was inside of my DM, and they was constantly hitting me up and want to go out on dates and things like that for 2 years. And I'm like, nah, I'm cool. I can't do that with my position of power. I can't misuse my position.
Mhm.
But as of late, I've decided to, date 2 of them. It was like 4 or 5 months ago. I was dating, like just going out on dates with women. Like, hey, my power getting to me a little bit. Let me go out on a date. I'm chill, you know what I'm saying? So I end up misusing my power with that, make a long story short. And it just brought up what I was really suffering from. And it was like a trauma of mine that I got 3 kids. I'm very vocal about my life because the environment I grew up in has really damaged me to a point where, I make some mistakes. And I got 3 kids by 3 different women. And I found out that I didn't love any of those women. It was a trauma bond for me to have sex. You get what I'm saying? Like, I was basically, out of everything that we was going through in the projects, the shootouts, the neighborhood brawls, the stabbings, all the things I'm naming for the social determinants of health, whether it's a food desert, infant mortality. When you see these things, it brings trauma. And a lot of times we smoking and drinking. But me specifically, I was smoking, drinking, and having sex to diffuse the trauma. So sex has served as a trauma bond, just like weed and liquor. We only was communicating or having sex because we was going through things. So I had 3 kids out of a trauma bond. I never loved any woman that I was ever with. And I didn't realize that until I got in this position and started, dating multiple women. Like, wait, like, this ain't right. You know what I'm saying? Like, what, you tripping? Slow down. Find you one woman that you want to be with, because you still reacting to your trauma how you used to react when you was in your environment. Now that you kind of, even though I still live in the projects, but mentally I'm not like doing everything everybody else is doing. So it's like I'm still reacting as Walt from the projects and not Walt as the creator of Ghetto Therapy, right? So yeah, so I had to facilitate that in front of like 50, 60 people. And I cried. Other men cried because I guess, these men probably was low key cheating on their wives and things like that. But I seen guys crying like, oh, like this is a real thing. And they was like, well, we needed that. Like that was real, that you can admit that you've been doing things, you misusing your power to date different women, or, trauma bonding with women, never loving one woman. Like those was a real thing. So that's
I think one of the things that we fail to address in our community is how, especially when it comes to men, how men desire intimacy and bond, and especially when you've been through a trauma, sex can become a relief. It's like you feel good for the moment, you get rid of, and it helps you block out and ignore the pain, right? But you find, and a lot of men find themselves in a cycle of just sleeping with multiple women because they really desire intimacy. And so but they don't want the commitment, or they fake it, just so that they can have the release of the pain, of the frustration. And that's a real thing. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being vulnerable enough to do that, because that's real. That's real. I respect real. And that's
because
dope.
kids are being born out of this trauma bond. So that's why you see a lot of single parents, single mothers, because in the beginning, like these guys never really wanted you in the beginning. It was just a trauma bond. They was going through a lot and they needed their release. And kids came out of that. So kids are being put here and not even supposed to be here. You get what I'm saying? Like, well, they supposed to be here because that's God's will. But what I'm saying is like, they're not wanted. It was just a trauma bond. And those are the kids that's probably doing the most to this day. It's generated.
And they suffer the consequences of our actions,
That's
and
what I'm
not
saying.
really understanding our trauma and what we've been through and what we've experienced. And
Yeah.
that's a real thing. So for the people who are watching that want to volunteer, offer services, or be a financial blessing to Ghetto Therapy or create art not violence, how do they contact you, and how would they go about doing that?
So right now, you can just contact me like how you did on Facebook with Walter Patton. You can contact me on Instagram with Walt Patton, WALTPATTON _ You can also contact me on the Free Thinker Since 87 page. Those are 3 pages: the Walter Patton Facebook, the Walt Patton _ Instagram, and also the Free Thinker Since 87 Instagram page. But on YouTube, my YouTube channel was Walter Patton as well. Anybody who want to give out donations or whatever to Ghetto Therapy, I utilize my Cashapp right now is just like Create Art Not Violence. So it's $CRE, the number 8, art, ART, NOT, violence. So create actual number, not violence. Create art, not violence, with the $ in the beginning.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna have that on my page. I'm gonna post that on my page, and I'll make sure that everybody listening gets that information, because I do feel like what you're doing is phenomenal, and I do feel like this is something that we need. And I'm so very happy that you took the time and the energy and the effort. Like, this is your legacy, and you, a regular person from down the way, decided to start something to change and create something beautiful in your environment. And we are blessed to have you in our community. And I'm just grateful and excited about doing more initiatives and working with you and getting my own group session on, because I'm going to utilize ghetto therapy. Like, I'm just a regular girl from the hood too, trying to do something different. So I thank you for coming on today. I thank you for your time. And this has been beautiful and enlightening for a lot of people. And I'm sure it's going to bless a lot of people to hear this. So if you want to go, shout it out one more time. Ghetto Therapy, where is it located?
So Ghetto Therapy is every Wednesday from 6 to 8 p.m. We're located on 4600 Euclid Avenue next to the Agora. That's 4600 Euclid Avenue next to the Agora. But every second Wednesday, we do Teens Night at Langston Hughes, the Cleveland Clinic facility, on 2390 East 79th and Quincy, the same time from 6 to 8.
Thank you so very much for coming on, Walt. I appreciate you. You have a great day.
Yeah, we gotta stay connected.
For sure.
I want to partner. Like, we gotta, do some work together. Like, I don't, we can just partner and collaborate on some things. I think I see fit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a must. We definitely going to do that. So thank you for everybody for coming on, joining us tonight. I'm going to have links for Walt for group Ghetto Therapy, and also for Create Art Not Violence. And I'm going to have Walt's Cash App put up. So if you are willing to donate, do you like people to bring art supplies? If you want to bring canvas out, I know you use canvas. If you
Yeah.
have a studio that you would like to offer free services so they can come record, we would definitely appreciate it. Thank you so much, Walt. Um, and have a great day. Thank you. Peace
And let
out.
everybody know I kept my word.
And
You
he
know,
definitely
coming.
kept his word. Thank
Thank.
you, Walt.
Take care.
Peace.